Alright, what is going on, guys? Jezzi here with One of One Traders, and I'm going to be reviewing this Intel swing that I got into with my mentor. He's the one who kind of called it out, but just because someone calls out a trade, and I don't take anyone's trades but besides his, because we kind of trade the same. Obviously, he's the one who taught me, and I trust the way he trades because I kind of took what he taught me and I built my own way and my own little strategy and what works for me. But again, when he says something, I obviously, like, I'll take it in and I'll look for it myself, see if I see the same thing, and I did. So I'm gonna go ahead and explain to you this Intel swing that I got into. So I personally purchased contracts on February 21st. They were for, let me check. They were for, they were March 7th, 23.5 puts, and I purchased them here. This was the purchase. I'm gonna move that because I was just showing like a strong support zone. Okay, yeah. So this was the purchase here on February 21st. It was a Friday. Let's get into it. So what is Intel? It's obviously a big, computer technology company. Yada yada yada. If you don't know what Intel is, I don't even think you probably own a computer. It's what runs your computers. It's like microchips and everything. So he sent out a notification in the group, said, as you can see here, oh, Intel March 7th puts, INTC, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, you saw that. Boom. So, okay, I was like, all right, let me see what he sees. And I kind of got an idea of what he saw, especially coming back to this big zone here. So, these green lines, let me explain those first. Boom, we have a previous high, and then we have a strong resistance zone here. We can see price came up, dropped all the way back down, breaking below this initial resistance here, and catching the same support here where it was previously a strong resistance. We see resistance, resistance, support, support. Now, I want you to look at the volume. You can see volume coming up is steady, coming up to that high. Now it's starting to drop. Now price is starting to drop, and the volume is starting to drop. Price pushes up again on decreasing volume, and this is the hourly chart, so we're getting a very large time frame of what's going on, and this is over a few days. We can see price is pushing back up on decreasing volume. Price pushing up on decreasing volume, always insinuates there is going to be a drop because, it's going up, but not as many people are buying. So, people are just waiting and waiting and waiting to really get where they want it or where they want to sell. So it's kind of like a waiting game at that point. As you can see, retests right back up to this previous resistance high here and drops from there. It gets caught again at this resistance here. This is this zone. This is why I had it highlighted. This whole zone here gets caught here again, end of day on Friday, and that is when I purchased my contracts. As you can see, Monday it dropped. Tuesday broke below that low, and that is where I took my first trim. They were up 60% at the time. They were up 60%. I can't exactly remember. Yeah, I think it was around 60%, and that is where I took a majority trim. We still had a lot of time left on these contracts, so I let them ride out. I wasn't really paying attention because, it's like a two week out swing. So, and again, after this first trim, I secured majority profit. So when I take a trim, I'm basically trimming more than what would I have left in the remaining position. So, God forbid, price does end up, those contracts do lose all their value. I'm still making profit on that trade. So as you can see, comes up, retests again, but as you can see now, it's using this now support, which was the previous resistance, as again its resistance. So it's basically flipped. So it was an uptrend, now it has flipped to a downtrend because it is using that previous resistance, or this resistance again as another resistance flipping down, where it was being used as a support. And earlier this week, which well, this is the week that we're trading. It's Friday today. This is this week. Uh, so that's the technical side, the volume and just basic market structure. Now let's get into like the political side, because when you are trading, news is very important, because a lot of these big companies, they go based off news, and a lot of these big investors, they go based off news, because they have inside information. So let's get into that. So one thing we need to understand is the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS and Science Act was signed into a law in 2022. Pay attention. You're going to want to understand it. Signed into a law in 2022, provides $52.7 billion in funding to boost semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S. In Trump's recent address to Congress, he called for the repeal of the CHIPS Act, labeling it a horrible, horrible thing. That's from Bloomberg. He proposed reallocating the remaining funds to reduce the national debt or for other purposes. So, how would this CHIP Act affect INTC? Trump's recent call to end the CHIPS Act introduces uncertainty for Intel and other U.S. semiconductor companies that rely on government subsidies for domestic chip manufacturing. So basically, investors weighing in the risk of the cut of the government funding, because that is a lot of money that these companies are using to do expansion and, have debt relief, yada, yada, yada. Intel has committed tens of billions in capital and expenditures for new fabs, expecting the government support. Again, for these big companies to do these big, new projects, they need a lot of money, and that government support gives them that cushion to continue moving forth, and that's what these investors are investing in, because if a project does go well, then it's going to get a lot of new attraction, and people are going to be investing, yada, 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 more liquidity. But when the government removing that cushion, it's putting them on a more thinner line, and they're running on less expenses. So it's just going to shake things up. Without subsidies, Intel may have to take on more debt or scale back on expansion plans. So basically, projects that they had in mind, they can't continue with those. The prospect of losing CHIPS Act funding could shake investor confidence in Intel's turnaround strategy. Intel stock may experience increased volatility, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So basically, that's Trump announcing that he wants to repeal the CHIPS Act, which is basically the government giving money to this company. It's scaring people off, because obviously they're not going to have the funds to move forward with such projects that they wanted to. So obviously people are going to, some, not all, but some people are going to sell what they have of Intel if this act gets passed. But I was doing some research, and it doesn't seem like they're going to move forward with it immediately. But it literally could be one speech or message Trump says, or yada, 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 and it could really scare people off. So again, as you can see, that announcement was a couple days ago, but there's obviously insider trading. People get information before it is announced to the public, and that would account for this drop of this zone here. Price coming up to this previous level of support or supply. As you can see, that $25 mark. People probably sold knowing what was going to happen. Not everybody, only some people and big companies, like the sharks and the whales of the stock market. So people sell off, that message comes out, and then it continues dropping again. On that second big drop, that is where I took my second trim. Excuse me. That is where I took my second trim, and now these contracts were up 417%. Let me show you. As you can see, up 417% on the 4th. Boom. March 7th, 23.5 puts. I had a couple contracts left. And then yesterday, yesterday morning, this drop here is where I closed one more contract actually. So I'm gonna put that right there, kind of like that. Is where I had one more contract. As you can see, up 560% on those remaining contracts. And I closed one more, so I have one left, and that expires today. So we're gonna see if it does go up. It's obviously in the money because the strike price was for 23.5, which is all the way up here, and it is now at $20.50. So these contracts are in the money. I'm in profit with every single contract here. So I really have nothing to worry about. But yeah, so that was kind of the technical and political analysis of this trade explained through and through. So I hope you learned something, and being able to understand why, knowing what's going on politically is also just as beneficial as being able to understand what you're looking at on a stock chart, how to read the volume, the candles, yada, yada, yada. You can understand all of this, but there's so many other factors that you have to take in. So I hope you learned something, and thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.